Welcome. What are three of the greatest challenges that infertility ministries are facing today? That's what we're going to discuss as part of the Easter 2024 series, Rebuild My Church. We're going to offer the church, us, the body of Christ, actionable ways to help overcome these challenges in an effort to bring renewal from within. I am Lisa Martinez. I'm the founder of Little with Great Love. We are a restoration ministry of storytellers that seeks to bring hope, healing, and restoration in Christ using media. And so you're finding us on the blog today or on the video, however you're finding us on socials. We're so glad. And I'm joined by my friend and my special guest today, Ann Koshute. Hi, Ann.
Hi, Lisa. I'm so excited to be with you today.
Such a grace and blessing to always be with you. Ann is the co-founder of Springs in the Desert, which is a Catholic infertility ministry. And I want you to tell us a little bit about yourself, Ann, a little of your story.
Oh, sure. So I live in central Pennsylvania with my husband, Keith. We have been married. It'll be 13 years in June. I can't believe it. It's like yesterday and it's been forever. But I'm a cradle Catholic. I'm actually Byzantine Catholic. So for those watching, you can maybe see the icons behind me. And yeah, I am maybe one of the most unlikely people to ever get involved in starting a ministry. It is not at all something that I expected, but I also didn't expect to study theology. I have a Master of Theological Studies from the Pontifical John Paul II Institute for Studies on Marriage and Family. And trust me, I was a theater major in college. Nowhere on my bingo card did it say you will get a master's in theology.
I love it. And I love how God calls the unlikely ones, right, forward. And I know it has to do with part of your own story, right, in your marriage as well.
Yeah. So, I started Springs in the Desert with my friend, Kimberly. She's also a graduate of the JP2. And, we started this ministry because we thought that, what we found in our experience is that there really wasn't a sort of pastoral discussion or initiative that was addressing infertility, certainly addressing it from, the aspect of helping us to become healthy, optimizing fertility, all of that sort of thing. But that real spiritual and emotional pain, isolation. I mean, I know we'll get into it a little bit more here in a couple of minutes, but when we met each other a few years after graduation, Kimberly and I started sharing with each other about infertility and our own struggles. And for me, it was the first time that I had opened up to anyone who was also going through it. And so, of course, we had conversations back and forth over the course of a year or two, and we kept saying someone ought to do something. The church needs a ministry. And then, finally, I guess we heard the Holy Spirit because he was knocking on our door for a while. And we said, well, maybe he wants us to do it. And that's how we kind of fell in. They say that necessity is the mother of invention. And that was certainly the case for us with this ministry.
Absolutely. I find that that's often how he draws us, right? Is through our own personal story, through the lack that we see, which is a perfect segue into what we're calling forth here, right? Is that you, in your experience now, how many years has it been for Springs that you guys started?
It's been 4 years. So we're coming into our 5th year. Which is unbelievable.
Yeah, it's amazing. So in these, coming into year 5, now it's like you have a pretty good sense of the landscape, right? And you're seeing more things. So how about you give us one challenge right now that you've been experiencing a lot? And right after that, we'll discuss some of the solutions that we could address with that.
Yeah, I think that the biggest challenge we see, and really the reason that we started Springs in the Desert in the first place, is that most of the discussion around infertility within the church has to do with things like NFP, natural family planning, and charting, and helping to optimize our fertility. And then, of course, the licit ways that we can do that, things like NAPRO technology, the different kinds of morally licit and good treatments that are out there. I mean, which are such a blessing, right? So good, because the desire for a child is so good. And if there are ways that we can heal our bodies, to optimize our fertility and create the situations where we can conceive, that's a wonderful thing. But I think too often that's where the conversation goes when we talk about infertility within the church. And so there's really very little written to those of us like myself who have never been pregnant, or even women who have gone through miscarriage or going through secondary infertility. Very little that's kind of written or spoken about beyond maybe saying, well, you're called to be fruitful too, or you have a lot of gifts to give to the church too. And then it kind of stops there. And so you're sort of left on your own trying to figure out what that means. Then you pull into the parking lot of your church on Sunday, and you have these 16 passenger vans, and you have the pews that are filled with these large families. And you think, well, I certainly don't fit into that mold. Where is my place, in the church? Where is my place of giving life, of being fruitful?
Absolutely. I totally relate. And the reason why Ann and I came to connect in the first place was around this topic of infertility. We've spoken about it as I've been writing my book about infertility devotional, and have experienced the same. We're coming into year 13 of our marriage this year in June as well. And we've not conceived as well. And it is very much that experience of, it's such a natural culture within the church to cater to family life, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's beautiful and it's good, and it's what we said we were open to, and at the same time we made vows to each other,
Right.
and we said we would be open to life. And if we say we'll be open to something, then there has to be a reverse, that there is something, even though we're not closed to it. I guess in a sense it could be close to us in some way, right? And in that God has a different avenue to experience that. But you're right, we're left to figure that out. And it's so difficult when you have things for young people and young adults, and you have things for married couples and families. And then there's this space here where it's like, what about the couple that's trying to still conceive? What about the couple that cannot conceive? What about the couple that is not going to adopt? What about the couple that doesn't feel called to foster?
Right.
Where's our place? Where's our voice? And stuff. So what do you think for those that feel kind of unseen? What do you think are some things that could be helpful here?
I think, we can look at something like infertility and think of it as this kind of niche, right? Like, well, this is something that just sort of affects this one little block of people. We can sort of feel bad. Oh, that's too bad. I'm so sorry. But, kind of buck up, buttercup. Let's, just get with the program and move along. But really, I think that infertility, affects our spiritual life, our faith in God, so many aspects, but it really is something that impacts marriage. And I think we can begin to maybe look at it more in those terms, as not just something, a cross that an individual couple carries, but that it really is something that impacts marriage, more broadly speaking. And so I think maybe, I don't know if this is a solution. I think that there are a lot of movements or steps that we can take to help, make things a little bit better. But I think one of those things can be just having a better understanding, or maybe talking more about the sacrament of marriage. and what it means. The fact that marriage is for the bonding of the couple, right? For that partnership, and also for that openness to life. And I think sometimes also people misunderstand or don't really know the teaching of the church that we're called to be open to life. But if children are not a gift and a blessing that is given to a particular couple, it's not as if they're not really married or they're not fully living out their married life. And so I think one thing just generally in the church that can help all of us, whatever our situation is in our marriage, is to have a sort of a better understanding of the gift of marriage and how it really is meant to be a sign of God's love in the world, and frankly, a sign of contradiction in this world that is so easily kind of drawn to whatever gratifies me instantly. And, if I'm not being satisfied, if I'm not self-fulfilled, then I should just move on and find, whatever will fulfill me. And I think in a particular way, those of us who carry this cross of infertility and loss are a real witness, have a real opportunity to be a witness to the good of marriage and to the importance of ministering to our spouses, loving each other, and nurturing that relationship.
Yeah, 100%. I think that conversation around that begins in so many ways, right? Through kind of normalizing those discussions with children at an appropriate age. I know some people that I've interviewed, for the book, you know, having that understanding of maybe infertility or issues, or normalizing adoption and other types of vocations that one might pursue, or at least consider, those things being normalized at a younger age have kind of given them more of an openness to that idea as they move forward. They, I think, are more adjusted. They just kind of had an understanding of the kind of like just a sense of understanding of the world as it is, and that things don't always progress A, B, C. We got married, we waited for 6 months, then we tried, then we had the babies, and they kept rolling until we felt, whatever, So I think that's one thing. And I think that this marriage prep idea, right? And that's another place that we can,
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think so. And something we've been thinking about a lot as a team. And before I came into this ministry, I worked in a family life office in an archdiocese, and I mean, marriage prep was my thing. That was my responsibility. And I'm on a marriage prep team now as well. So I still have my hand in all of that. But one thing that is really not, I think, brought up or not very often is infertility. I think, we become so concerned about talking about NFP and dissuading couples from using contraception, which I fully endorse, because apart from the moral issues, there's also a lot of health issues and reasons not to contracept. But I think that, we sort of come in from the get-go with this idea that, no, you're not going to want children. We know you won't want children right off the bat, right? And so, I think it's sort of unwittingly, we don't mean to, it's an unconscious kind of thing, but we can easily, even within the church, kind of play by the culture's rules, right? Because we want to win people over to our side, so we sort of start at where they are standing within the culture. And so I think that we can do that differently. I think it would be interesting if we could begin to reimagine how we talk about NFP, or how we talk about children and starting a family in marriage preparation. And one of those ways is also, I think, to expand the notion of fruitfulness. And that doesn't mean that we create sort of a menu. So like children are on the menu and I can order them or not. No, I mean, children are a gift, and they are an important aspect of marriage. But whether or not children come, we are called to be fruitful. We're called to give life in the world. And that's everybody. That is, married, single, young, old, priest, religious, no matter who you are. We're called to conceive Christ in our hearts and give birth to him in the world. And that is through, so many different ways, through our service, our volunteering, just through our presence with other people. And so I think if we can have that more expansive notion of fruitfulness and talk about that in marriage preparation, I think that could be something that is really exciting for couples. And in fact, while they are engaged, they can start to think about, well, gee, how can we be fruitful right now? And in what ways can the love that we experience now, give life in the world, and give them an opportunity to be creative in that way. But this is outside the box thinking. And I understand that in the church, we tend to like to stay in the box. But that's why I think what you're doing here with this series is so wonderful, because we should have these conversations and try to think creatively. God has called us into partnership with him, and called us, invited us to share in his creativity, right? And I mean, this is one way that we can do that.
Oh, so true. And I love that. I love that you think outside the box too, because you're speaking my language.
Yeah.
So NFP teachers, family life coordinators, people in the parish that are looking for something, you can approach the people within your parish. You can approach somebody in charge of these departments or speak to your pastor. When you have these opportunities to have those conversations, take advantage of it, right? We can ask for things because we see a need, right?
Right.
All right. Let's talk about number 2.
This is a big one for us in our ministry also, and that is the fact that so often infertility, but this can apply to many other situations as well, is so often approached in terms of solutions. And again, back to this idea of restoring our bodies to good health and making use of that good, medical knowledge that we have acquired to help us become healthy and do things to optimize our fertility, all good things. But so often when we are walking this path and when we are really suffering, I think it's hard for people to see that, right? So we all suffer, we all carry crosses, and like it stinks, right? Like we don't like to suffer. We don't want to suffer. Suffering is an evil. We're not meant to suffer, okay? But now because of sin, this is a consequence, right? But I think that it's sometimes even harder to watch another person suffer. There's great discomfort that we feel in the face of suffering. We struggle to find words. Think about when someone passes away, all of the things that we want to say, because we mean well. But sometimes, they can end up sort of making the other person feel, even more deeply hurt than they are. And so there can be this tendency to want to offer solutions, whether it is, well, my next door neighbor's cousin's daughter tried this and she got pregnant right away. Or why don't you pray to this saint? Or why don't you make this novena? And when, again, it's well-meaning, but when we're offered those solutions, number one, it can feel a bit dismissive of our suffering. And number two, it can make it feel almost like this is really pretty easy. If we did it right, it would happen for us. And so we can really begin to feel like failures. I didn't pray the right prayers, or I didn't pray them long enough, or I mean, gosh, maybe that saint doesn't really like me. And so, he's not listening to me and won't intercede. You know, and I mean, look, this, Lisa, from your ministry, the devil will latch on to anything he can and, just kind of multiply those thoughts and those lies in your mind. So I think that, people are well-meaning, but they don't realize that because this is so sensitive and so painful, even their well-meaning gestures can be hurtful. And so what's needed is not really solutions or for us to be fixed. What's needed is presence and love.
Mm, I agree 100%. And I think that so much, the deeper that I get into the restoration ministry, and you and I have had conversations, healing, restoration, what our idea of healing, become so fixated maybe on that this can become an idol to us, right? Of like, oh, I need to, take all these toxins out of my environment and then I'll be fixed, and we read the books and we try the diets and we take the supplements and we go to the doctors and we get the surgeries and we do all the things. And there are so many people that also, like you say, in this idea that if I would do this enough, then I would. There's so many people that are struggling when carrying this cross to think, I'm not good enough. God
Right.
didn't see me good enough. I'm being punished for something. I am, God didn't see me worthy. If I would have tried harder, if I would have this, or I did everything right, so I should therefore have a child, And we already struggle with this mindset of solutions, right? We're battling it ourselves. We're battling all the time of, am I grasping for control? Am I pursuing all these things over God? And am I trying to make things happen on my own all the time instead of being receptive? And so if you come in with your solution on top, it pushes something that's already right. Now, I got to try harder. I got to strive. I got to make it happen. Right. So
Yeah.
presence and love. I love that.
Yeah. And I think, one of the things that you and I have talked about is our clergy, right? Our pastors, our priests, our deacons. I mean, they love us. They're here to serve us. But I think so often they just don't know how, and they might be great at funerals and give great homilies and in all sorts of situations. But infertility seems to be a really difficult one, not just for clergy, but for almost everyone. I mean, what do you say? How do you fix that? And the answer is that you can't. You can't fix it, but you can be present. You can love that person. You can tell them that you are praying for them. You can be there to listen to them. And I think really importantly, and this goes for our clergy, but also for family members, for friends, you can affirm us and affirm our marriages. Let us know, wow, you guys really love each other and it comes through. Or you have so many gifts that you can offer to the parish, to the community, to your family, to your work, whatever it might be. Thank you. Thank you for sharing yourself. You bring so much, to our parish or to our family. Those kinds of positive sort of affirmations, I think, are much more productive. And they're also easier to come by than fumbling around for what's the right word that I can say, or, how can I sort of make this all seem better than it is. Affirm us in our marriages. And that goes a long way to helping us not feel as if we are so other, that we are just so different from everyone else, who is around us in the pews.
And I think there's that call to also go to the fringes, right? Because if we're hanging on the margin, because we're not being invited to the play dates, and we don't fit in with the mommy club,
Right.
and we're not going to school, so we miss, all those interactions with other women and mothers and whatnot. That it doesn't mean we don't want to go to the birthday party. It doesn't mean that we wouldn't go with you to the park when you play with your kid, right?
Right.
Invite us in too. I know that we're talking within our ministry, about community and what that looks like. And we're so enriched to actually, do you think, um, women in their 20s, 30s, 40s all together, and you're thinking, oh, well, I'm not in my 20s, so what can we relate to? Actually, it's been so beautiful to see this relation of people in different states of life, single, consecrated,
Yeah.
married without children, married with children, and the richness that comes by not having a judgment and saying, well, I'm just going to hang out with moms, and stuff because they
Right.
get me. I can bring something to you, and you can bring something to me. And I think if we can kind of realize that, it's just loving and presence, even if you're in a different state of life, that's good.
Yeah. Well said.
But what's number 3 challenge that we're facing here?
Yeah, I think it's just kind of an overall lack of sensitivity, particularly within the parish family, because as I mentioned earlier, infertility is something that is so isolating. And it's so paradoxical, isn't it? Because we simultaneously feel invisible and exposed, right? We
Mm,
feel like, as you just mentioned a minute ago, the moms group or the young adults, or, there's all these different groups where we feel we don't quite belong. And so we feel isolated. And yet at the same time, we feel sort of exposed because there we are, every week sitting in the pew together as a couple. Or we go to events and people ask that question about children, which is a normal question. I mean, that's
yeah.
natural. But in our community, some people most recently have mentioned the fact that if they say, well, we don't have children right now, or we're trying, or whatever the answer might be, that the person who asks the question just kind of is frozen, and
Mhm.
then maybe turns away and starts talking to somebody else, as if there's nothing to talk about if you can't have that commonality of children. And so
Yeah.
I think, so there's that sort of sensitivity, that myth of the big Catholic family, right? That the number of children that you have is sort of a measure of your holiness. And even some of the judgment or the presumptions that can enter our minds if we see a couple who doesn't have children. We might presume that they're contracepting, or maybe they're just selfish. They just want to kind of live it up, live their own life, and there's no room for children. And so, we're human. We make those kinds of judgments. So I think you mentioned a minute ago this idea of community. And I think that is the solution, is that we need to become a community. And, as you said, Pope Francis talks about this idea of people living on the margins, and that we need to go out to the margins. So that is whether it's a struggle with infertility or any other cross that people are carrying. I think that this sort of compartmentalization that we have in the church with groups is a double-edged sword. I think it's good and necessary to have youth and young adults, to have moms groups, to have things for men, to have all these different ways that people can be ministered to right where they are. But I think all of that should be at the service of reintegrating us back into the community, so that we're like the Samaritan woman, right? Jesus goes to the well, meets her where she is, and then what happens? She runs back to the village and tells everybody all about him. And now the community has come together. And that's how it should be for those of us on the margins, or whatever cross we're carrying, to be ministered to where we are, and then to come back into kind of the fullness of this parish family. So back to the earlier point, for our clergy, invite those couples who don't have children, who may not be fitting into a, particular group. Invite them to bring their gifts to the parish. Or if you are somebody who, is the head of a committee in the parish, or, it's the festival, or it's lecturing, or being a sacristan, whatever it might be, put out the net, invite those people to come in and participate and be an active part of the church, because they have beautiful gifts to bring to the whole church.
Yes. Amen, sister. I love that. I think that that's it. Re-engaging, right? Re-engaging, knowing that true sense of community, calling people in. And I think there's also part of us that has to, within us that are suffering, not be afraid to reach out, too.
Right.
And, and it's activating that within us. Because I know sometimes we were feeling that we just, we get safe and feeling unseen. And so you just hang back, you kind of stay, and you feel like, oh, this is my lane, I'll stay in that, and stuff. No, your lane is, we're called to the narrow path, and that's in community with the church, that we have this community that can journey with us, and for them to engage us and for us to engage them. And it's, a struggle, and it can be so beautiful. And I think the work that you're doing at Springs of the Desert is helping. So where can we find you guys?
So we have a great social media presence. So you can find us on Instagram and Facebook. You can also go to our website, springsinthedesert.org. You can listen to the Springs in the Desert podcast on your favorite listening platform. And I also want to put in a plug for our spiritual father, Father Paul. You can email him through our website, and he's just a really wonderful Byzantine Catholic priest who is married, and he and his wife have the experience of primary and secondary infertility. And so he just has a real understanding of this cross. And so if there's anybody out there who maybe has had some challenges with the clergy and that sensitivity and understanding, please contact us. We'll put you in touch with Father Paul. He is doing spiritual direction with people all over the country and even all over the world. And so he just loves this ministry, and it's very fruitful for him. And so, we just want everybody to know that we are here walking with you wherever you are on your path of infertility or loss. And we just want to love you and uplift you and encourage you.
I am so appreciative of that. You also have a ton of great resources. I got
Look
some
at
of
that.
these. Yeah, when I got to see you in October last year. So these
Mhm.
are on your website too, right? These are
Yes.
things that can be given to what, doctors,
Yep.
clergy?
There are a couple resources for doctors. There's one for your pastor. We also have our pastoral toolkit that'll be going in the shop pretty soon. Actually, the booklet, the pastoral guide, is already in our shop, so that can be purchased. You can give it as a gift to your priest, or invite him to come over to the website and order it. Just to give, talk a little bit about some of the things that we talked about today, but just some more suggestions and tools to help our clergy to better minister and walk with us.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ann, for joining us today. It's been such a blessing to know you and to know that the good work that Springs is doing. And, it's like, carry on, faithful servant.
Amen. Thank you, Lisa. We just love you and appreciate your ministry so much. It's, gosh, do we ever need healing and restoration? Every one of us. And so thank you for everything that you do.
You're welcome. Thank you so much. All right, guys. This is our session today ending, and keep up with us throughout Easter season. God bless you.